Today's headlines: 8 civilians killed and 7 heavily injured in a drone attack in Abala district in Afar regional state. Head of Bureau of Agriculture and Rural Development in Tigray says death rates have shown a 9-fold increase since the start of the siege. UNICEF appeals for $31 million in drought response as Ethiopia's House of People's Representatives approves nearly $2 billion for military expenditure. Hello and welcome. Glad to have you with us. This is Tigrai Television live from Magala. I'm Lalim Tejana with today's news. Now I'll proceed to the details. 8 civilians have been reported killed in a drone attack in Afar in the Abala district, while 7 have been heavily injured. The drone attack took place yesterday at 2:30 in the afternoon and has caused massive destruction of private as well as public property, targeting a residential area in the Afar region. This is just one of many airstrikes that has devastated the Afar people, with an attack by Ethiopian forces on truck carrying civilians and killing 48. In an interview with Tigray's television, Seblor Grama, the head for Tigray's Bureau of Agriculture and Rural Development, Dr. Atunkut Mezgabo, said that death rates in Tigray had shown a 9-fold increase due to the blockade on humanitarian aid and the destruction of health facilities. The Bureau head also said that intervention by the international community would be essential to avert the humanitarian catastrophe in Tigray. Seblor Grama has the details.
The war on Tigray and the siege that has followed has had a devastating impact on the living standards of Tigrayans across the state, leaving over 1 million people in famine-like conditions and millions more in dire need of emergency assistance. In an interview with Tigray Television, Dr. Atunkut Mezgabo, head for the Bureau of Agriculture and Rural Development, says that death rates have shown a 9-fold increase in Tigray, while also emphasizing that deaths accounted for so far are only in areas that are accessible to the regional government and do not reflect the complete picture on the ground, with the communications blackout making it impossible for aid agencies and government to properly document the extent of the humanitarian crisis.
Yes, actually, it's tragedy just to see such kind of thing happening in a country in 21st century. Within specific area, relatively the better waradas, the death rate from this very specific 40% is like 5,421. So when you project it just easy, that is a minimal. It's like 13,525. It's like 9.5 fold. It's not percent. We are not saying doubling. It's not tripling. 9 times. So this is just easy. You have mentioned just in the your previous question, those areas, those peripheries are in the worst condition. So just ignore it. Just let's assume the others are also similar to the accessible area. So that is based on that assumption. What does it mean?
Dr. Atunkut also emphasized that even if humanitarian assistance were to be allowed into the regional state, lack of fuel and other essential supplies would make it impossible for partners or government agencies to deliver the much-needed assistance.
The situation in Tigray is beyond one's expectation, because we are in a level where we can't even clearly understand the problem because of the communication. You may have figures, several informations, like days, something like that. But this time it's not surprising. We are almost every area is just like disintegrated. There is no communication. There is just understanding on what is happening, what's going on in Tigray. And just the humanitarian actors were just in Meqaleh, were distributing some just were operating with minimal activities, with minimal service. But this time, because of the shortage of fuel, they are not operating.
Dr. Attinkut also discussed the remarkable growth that was recorded during the EPRDF era and the impacts of the deadly war.
Just if you consider the previous 25 or 27 years, the progress was remarkable. It was noticeable for everyone. Just support it, just in terms of figure, just if you consider the level of poverty in Ethiopia, 30 years ago, it was like 60% of the population was just below the poverty line. If you consider just like 2016, and considering the CSA data, the poverty level declines below 25%. So this is very just big achievement.
He also added that this was the time for the international community to act and ensure unfettered humanitarian access into Tigray.
All those indicators are just matching. This is just one indicator, but they may explain it in different way. So this is a true call, just this is the right time for international community to intervene. Actually, even maybe we are not getting humanitarian assistance for the last 48 days, I say, just to call it just based on the days. We haven't received any truck with food or other item. Just the humanitarian actors were just in Mekelle, were distributing some, just were operating with minimal activities, with minimal service. But this time, because of the shortage of fuel, they are not operating. The death rate we have considered is from July to October. November and December are the worst because things are just tightening, worsening. You can understand even how the things are changing. The international community should intervene at this time because the UN agencies, starting from last Friday, they are not just receiving any fuel. It means even if just in the last 2 days we have received cargo, we are not in a position, or they are not in a position to dispatch it, to disperse it to the waradas. So this is just a big signal or just call for international community to intervene on this one.
The World Food Programme issued a report last week that indicated 40% of the people in Tigray are suffering from extreme lack of food, while 3/4 of the population are using extreme coping strategies to survive.
UNICEF is appealing for $31 million to support 6.8 million vulnerable people in drought-impacted areas in Ethiopia that are expected to be in dire need of humanitarian assistance by mid-March 2022. This comes in light of the Ethiopian government approving an additional budget over $2 billion, of which over 74% are allocated to war efforts.
A report from UNICEF on Tuesday has projected that over 6.8 million people in Ethiopia's lowlands will be in urgent need of humanitarian assistance by mid-March 2022. The report said that 3 consecutive failed rainy seasons have brought on severe drought in Ethiopia's lowlands, regions of Afar, Oromia, the southern nations, nationalities and peoples, and Somalia region, pushing hundreds of thousands of children and their families to the brink. UNICEF said that in drought-affected areas in Oromia and Somalia, around 225,000 malnourished children and over 100 pregnant and breastfeeding women need urgent nutrition support, saying the lack of clean water is further exacerbated the situation for children and women. Currently, in the drought-impacted areas in Oromia and Somalia regions, some 4.4 million people are currently facing critical water shortages. It is also projected that in 2022, an estimated 850,000 children will be severely malnourished across the 4 regions due to multiple causes, namely conflict, drought, and economic downturn. UNICEF's drought response appeal for impacted areas in Ethiopia is at $31 million. to address the needs of 2 million vulnerable persons in need of urgent assistance. This comes in light of the House of People's Representative approving an additional budget of $2.4 billion, of which over 74% has been allocated to military expenditure.
The Bureau of Health has announced that Eider Comprehensive Hospital, the largest hospital in the regional state, has suspended laboratory services due to lack of essential supplies. The Bureau also stated that all health facilities across the state would stand to face the same fate if medical supplies are not made available soon. Emmanuel Amar has more.
Tigray's Bureau of Health says Eider Comprehensive Specialized Hospital, the largest hospital in Tigray, is no longer able to undertake laboratory examinations due to lack of basic medical supplies such as reagents and chemical. Kidda Takhlu from the Bureau says that almost all laboratories across the state are at great risk of suspending operation if basic medical supplies are not made available soon.
Laboratory kam Tigray inturu etalana.
Recently, Eider Hospital has suspended all laboratory services because it has run out of input essential for laboratories such as reagents and chemicals. Laboratories in Tigray in general have not only reduced the number of services they can provide, but almost all are being forced to close.
Kidda also added that patients' days toll is showing a rapid increase because doctors are not able to properly diagnose and treat patients, saying the role of health workers has been reduced to that of verbal consultation.
Even
Even when doctors meet patients in person, they are unable to provide them with medicine, except only for verbal consultation. Our health officers are unable to do anything in the absence of laboratories and essential medical supplies. They can neither properly diagnose nor can they provide medication, so they can't prescribe medicine based on clinical tests. Several patients are dying due to disease.
According to Kidda, even in the absence of basic medical equipment and medicines, he added that the hospital has been reusing basic equipment in the hopes of providing much-needed medical attention.
Because we are running out of test tubes, we have been forced to sterilize and reuse them. The shortage also includes basics such as surgical gloves that we have also started to reuse. We have been doing this for the past 3 weeks.
It is to be recalled that Eider Hospital has suspended all services to patients suffering from kidney failure, cancer patients in need of chemotherapy, and halted medical services to treat chronic illnesses including HIV/AIDS, diabetics, and hypertension due to lack of essential drugs and medical equipment.
Ethio Telecom revenue 14% below 6 months target as the Ethiopian government maintains a communication blackout in Tigray. CEO of the Ethio Telecom, Freo Tamru, told reporters on January 7th that 3,473 of the corporation's mobile services sites have stopped their operations at various times for a varying length of time, not to mention that 10 out of the 17 service centers outside the capital have been shut down. The CEO also highlighted that property worth more than 329 million birr have been looted. The communications blackout in Tigray has included all services to the region, including cell services, internet, and landlines, completely severing Tigray from the world. Ethio Telecom is a state-owned enterprise and serves as one of the Ethiopian government's highest source of revenue.
Months.
Tigray has been under siege. And this isn't your usual siege where government blocks all roads coming in and out of a particular city or state.
No, this is the most comprehensive siege of the 21st century.
Everything has been blocked. Food, commercial goods,
urgently needed aid,
medical supplies.
Really,
if you can name it.
The Ethiopian government has blocked it.
And also banks.
The Ethiopian government has blocked banks in Tigray from accessing their customers' information.
So yes, Tigrayans are deliberately being denied access to their savings.
And also, hospitals and pharmacies are running out of all medical supplies.
Hospitals don't have insulin,
anesthetics,
antibiotics, glucose.
They don't even have oxygen.
Also,
There's no fuel in Tigray.
Not for ambulances.
Not for 8 trucks attempting to distribute food to the 5 million people in need.
Not even for hospitals to run their generators with.
The Ethiopian government has repeatedly attacked
The Tekeze hydroelectric dam.
the only source of power supply in Tigray,
Using drones given to it by the United Arab Emirates.
Iran,
And Turkey.
But imagine, all this is happening and you can't tell anyone about it.
Imagine not being able to hear the voice of your friends and family members.
Imagine you're not able to reach out to the people you love and care for.
It's important to remember that everything you've heard about Tigray has been despite a communication blackout that has lasted as long as the deadly conflict.
The videos of massacres,
The stories of sexual violence,
the cases of malnutrition,
everything has been while under a complete communications blackout.
A complete blackout.
no internet,
No cell services,
no landlines.
Nothing.
There's absolutely no way for you to communicate with someone in Tigray.
so you must be asking yourself,
How there is still a television station running from Tigray.
How are we still here?
We have no salary,
transportation is non-existent,
Airstrikes are almost daily occurrences.
and life overall is unimaginably difficult.
but we still manage to make it to work.
And that's because we believe that if you knew our story, you'd care to act.
We here at Tigray Television want to bring the stories of ordinary Tigrayans to you.
we want you to learn about what's been unfolding in darkness.
And we want to help you imagine what life is like under siege. And we're doing this despite all the obstacles because
We trust you care about humanity,
About the struggles of people you've probably never met,
about us,
and the millions more in dire need of humanitarian assistance.
but also because we never want to hear you say,
You didn't know. A report by CNN has revealed that 2 Tigray ground technicians working for Ethiopian Airlines, Ethiopia's flag carrier, hid in the storage section of converted cargo Airbus for a 7-hour flight to Brussels, Belgium. The technicians said that the fear of being ethnically profiled and arbitrarily detained or killed had left them with no choice but to attempt the tough journey. One of the technicians had lost 4 of his relatives, while his fiancée and 7 months pregnant sister remained imprisoned in Afar region, where one of many internment camps are located. The 2 technicians hid in one of the aircraft's secret compartments for more than 3 hours before departure, then for 7 hours of flight with no food or water. The report also mentioned that one of the electricians obtained asylum in Belgium. The technicians are just one of many Tigrayans attempting a risky escape from their home country, according to the spokesperson for the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP. The war on Tigray has targeted health facilities across Tigray, devastating its healthcare system and exacerbating a dire humanitarian situation. Suhul Shira General Hospital is a healthcare facility in Shira, northwestern Tigray. Health professionals they say the hospital is at great risk of suspending basic operations if medical supplies are not made available soon. Aragawi Gabriel Mikhail has more on that.
The year-long war and the all-encompassing siege that it caused has greatly affected the healthcare system across Tigray. Hospitals and healthcare centers were demolished and looted by the Ethiopian forces and their allies. General Hospital of Suhul Shira is one of the healthcare facilities in Tigray that are unable to give service due to lack of medical supplies. A general practitioner at Suhul Shira General Hospital, Dr. Brahana Tasfai, said that the hospital is running out of basic medical supplies, to an extent where it is forced to reuse used gloves.
Our hospital had been going through a shortage of medical supplies for quite a long time now, but currently we have reached the worst stage. So we are forced to send our patients to private pharmacies to look for drugs, and we don't even know if they can get it. Moreover, people with chronic illnesses such as diabetes and high blood pressure, whom we have followed up for many years, are now in grave danger as we are unable to provide them with medical supplies. We have no medication for diabetes in any form, needle or pill. putting patients at risk of death. At this point, we don't even have gloves, and we are forced to reuse them. So Suhul Shara Hospital is at a brink of collapse.
Alamnesh Medhani is an OR nurse at Suhul Shara General Hospital who said that the international community needs to go beyond rhetorical condemnation and act now as people's lives are at stake of medical supplies depletion and countless airstrikes.
ኣብዚ ሕጂ ሰዓት ኣዴታት ዝወልዳ ኣለዋ ምንም መሳርሒ የለን ብድሮን ይጭፍጨፍ ኣሎ.
Currently, there are lots of mothers who are about to give birth, but we're out of medical supplies. On the top of this, people are dying and getting wounded by drone attacks. But there's no medical supply to help them with. The Ethiopian government kept on adding more problems to the existing ones by bombarding civilians with drones. The international community should know this and go beyond rhetoric condemnation. We know that it's illegal to block humanitarian aid and medical supplies under any circumstance, as this is not political but humanitarian issue.
Sister Ethiopia Mokonni is a gynecologist at Suhul Shara General Hospital, saying that the hospital is at a great depletion of medical supplies and people are dying due to lack of proper medication.
The hospital has a great problem of medical supplies, and people are dying due to lack of medical supplies and other services for that matter. The hospital has been functioning under a great lack of medical supplies for over 15 months now, but currently we have reached level 0.
Health facility condition in Tigray is getting worse day after day due to lack of medical supplies. Unless the international community has found a way to lift the siege on Tigray and allow access to humanitarian aid, the situation is going to be catastrophic.
Ethiopian satellite television has been calling for violence against Tigrayans since its founding in 2009. The media organization was established by funds from the Eritrean government and has still this day maintained a close relationship with the Eritrean dictator. In a recent broadcast, the media organization called for the continuation of the siege on Tigray, saying anywhere between 4 to 5 years would be necessary to help the people of Tigray reflect on their choices. Our reporter Winta Kirana has more on this.
The first 8 months of the conflict were marked by unspeakable atrocities committed on the Tigrayan civilians by Ethiopian forces and their allies from Eritrea. But in June of 2021, Tigrayan forces were able to repel these armies from much of Tigray and remove the immediate danger to the safety and well-being of Tigrayans. The following day, however, the Ethiopian government would impose an all-encompassing siege on Tigray, discontinuing all basic services including banking, telecommunication, and blocking all humanitarian aid from coming into Tigray. The continued blockade has a devastating impact on ordinary Tigrayans. Severe acute malnutrition rate stands at a whopping 3.4% for children, as a collapsed health system is unable to cope with the needs of the many in desperate need, including those with chronic illnesses. And at the forefront of this inhuman humanitarian blockade have media outlets that have not only justified but encouraged the Ethiopian government action.
What needs to happen here is the people of Tigray need some time for reflection, maybe 4 or 5 years. TPLF hasn't been destroyed yet, and it cannot be destroyed within 3 or 6 months. Therefore, the siege should continue for this period to ensure that it cannot pose a threat to the people of Eritrea, Afar, and Amhara. This is quite clearly necessary. This will allow the government to focus on the remaining 94% of the population.
In a clear demonstration of the genocidal intents of the ongoing conflict, a period of reflection is often the term used by Ethiopian outlets to refer to the ongoing siege on Tigray, suggesting that a man-made humanitarian catastrophe is sure to lead to the deaths of hundreds of civilians is actually being done to repair the outdated political opinion of the Tigrayan society.
The first chapter of the war has been completed. The second chapter is to give the people of Tigray some time to reflect on their choices and understand that nothing can change.
But this isn't the first time Ethiopian satellite television ESAT has called for genocide against the people of Tigray. In fact, the media organization had been at the forefront of disseminating hate speech and disinformation about the people of Tigray. On September 4, 2016, 6 years before the outbreak of war in Tigray, Mesai Mokonnen, a journalist at the ISAT, would call for the elimination of 5 million Tigrayans, saying the fate of the remaining 95 million would depend on their elimination.
ይህ የጥፋት እቅድ የታቀደው ከ5 ሚሊዮን ህዝብ ለ95 ሚሊዮን ህዝብ ነው። የተበላሸና አሳን ከባህር ማስወገጃ መንገዱ አንዱ ነው የባህር ውሃ ማስወገድ።
Mesai isn't the only one who used the comparison of 95 million to 5 million. On the following video, his colleague uses the exact terms to call for the elimination of Tigrayans.
The West has to worry about 95% of the country, more than 100 million people. Whether their national security depends on the stability of Ethiopia or whether it is to discourage migration to Europe, the bulk of it will come from the rest of Ethiopia.
But ISAT and its founders are not merely observing the ongoing conflict and providing commentary. They have actually been active participants, tracing the relationship between the media entity, its founders, and its funding can give us a clear picture about the level of cooperation between the Ethiopian and Eritrean government, as that is not only limited to military cooperation, but has gone as far as cooperating media effort to normalize hate speech against Tigray. Former CEO of ISAT and current education minister in Ethiopia, Birhanu Nagga, had close relations with Eritrean government. In fact, findings from 2014 report by UN monitoring group revealed that an Eritrean diplomatic mission and military officers were actively involved in the recruitment, escorting, arming, and training Birhanu Nagga's Gumbot Sabat. Nagga has in turn shown his support for the Eritrean government by rejecting calls by the international community for the full and verifiable withdrawal of Eritrean forces from Tigray, who at the time were involved in gross violations of human rights, including the use of rape as a weapon of war, the deliberate and systematic destruction of health facilities and food items across the state.
የኤርትራ ጦር ይውጣ የአማራ ሚሊሻ ይውጣ እኮ የሚሉን አገሮች አይደለም አገራቸው ውስጥ እንዲህ አይነት ችግር ገብቶ ሰው ሀገር ይሄዱ እኮ ማአት መከራ የሚያዩ አገሮች
The country is calling on Eritrean soldiers and the Amhara militia to withdraw from Tigray are countries that are responsible for unspeakable misery in other countries. They would have gone through what we are going through now. They can use international law to favor their interests alone. We are in the government and we don't know the potential of the Ethiopian army. But if the government believes that Ethiopia needs help in order to keep the unity and peace of the country, we accept this and defend it so the country's sovereignty is maintained. As you can see, it is hard to differentiate the truth from the lies on social media. One channel will say that thousands of innocent people were massacred in Aksum, but the other will show you the celebration that took place on the same day and no sighting of guns and shooting. We should not listen to such insane news, but instead depend on truth and principles.
Andargachew Tsege, the current CEO of the media organization, once referred to as the Trojan horse of the Eritrean government to destabilize Ethiopia by former Prime Minister of Ethiopia Hailemariam Desalegn, has personally been caught using hate speech calling for barbarism and cruelty towards Tigrayans.
አምራችሁ ሌላ ምርጫ ስለሌለ ነው አምራችሁ ያለ ምንም ርህራሄ ያለ ምንም አማራዊ ኢትዮጵያዊ ደግነት ከነሱ ጋር ሲመጣ ያለ ምንም መወላወል በሚያስፈልገው ማንኛው እውነቴን ነው የምናገረው አረመናዊ በሆነ ጭካኔ ነው ልንጋፈጣቸው የሚገባው አረመናዊ በሆነ ጭካኔ.
After Abiy's rise to power, Tsege and his media organization would come to the center of Ethiopian politics. In fact, he would even play a central role in the peace deal between Ethiopia's Abiy Ahmed and Eritrea's Isaias Afwerki.
ያውማን ተብታናግራቸው የሚል ነገር አለ እና እንጠይቀዋለሁ እነሱንም ቢያሉ ለኔ እንዴት ይሰማሉ ብለው
The Prime Minister asked me to be a mediator on the negotiation. I said, what makes you sure that they will accept my offer? And he said that he had a gut feeling. I didn't go to Eritrea. I just sent a message and I also had a discussion with Yemana Gabrab in London. The biggest fact in establishing peace was the trust the Eritrean government had in me. I had a strong relationship with the government. The only thing they asked me was if I trusted him, and I told them I did. After a week, they sent me a text through WhatsApp saying they wanted to communicate with the Ethiopian government. I forwarded that message to Abiy. That's the story behind the Ethiopia peace deal.
And the Ethiopian Prime Minister has on repeated occasions stated his gratitude to the media organization. In a parliamentary address in 2019, the Prime Minister would publicly praise the media entity and say it had been performing better than even state-owned outlets.
በጣም በሳል የሆኑ ጋዜጠኞች አሉ። ለምሳሌ ኢሳትን ብቻ እንደ ምሳሌ ብንወስድ ሲሳይ አጌና የሚያቀርባቸው ትንታኔዎች ከመንግስት ጋዜጠኞች በተሻለ በጣም ጠቃሚዎች ናቸው።
For years, ISAT has played a dangerous role in normalizing hate speech against Tigrayans. It has also played an important role in outlining the type of relationship the Ethiopian and Eritrean governments would have in the wake of 2018, a deal that was never centered on bringing about peace and stability for the neighboring nations, but has instead forged a path of destruction.